Welcome to Real Estate Ripoffs, and this week's edition is the City of Los Angeles mansion tax. Now, this is an idea that is used in other cities as well, and is growing steam as governments increasingly bankrupt and reflecting on that, need to do something to get more revenue. And the easy, obvious answer for many seems to be, let's just tax the rich. Let's get the money from their mansions. But it's not quite that simple. Let's see. I'm Bill Gross. I'm a practicing real estate broker here in Los Angeles, California. I live in LA, practice mostly in Los Angeles, but all over California. But this is my backyard. This is where I see the business on a daily basis. And we saw this on our ballot a year and a half ago, and everybody knew it was a bad idea. But in LA, we don't really have elections. The government officials just print ballots and fill them out and then turn them in and count until they win elections and pass it. And that's what probably happened here. So we had this new bill passed called Measure ULA. And of course, like everything else, it's pitched to help the latest problems, which in this case was homelessness and to help housing affordability. They're going to build more affordable housing. So let's take a look and see how they've done in retrospect. This is the actual website for the city of LA with a real pretty logo, of course. And good news is the limits of this mansion tax went up. Now it went up from 5 million to 5,150,000 because housing prices went up 3% last year. And so at 5,150,000, there'll be a 4% surcharge tax onto real estate. And then at 10 million and up, which is now been adjusted to 10,300,000, that tax is raised to 5.5%. So there you go. It sounds good. We'll just tax the wealthy and we'll give the money to homeless people and people can't afford housing, and that solves all the problems, right? Well, it's not quite that simple. One thing that's, and it's interesting, the city has this little easy, handy-dandy calculator. If you put on your sales price, and let's say we have a $6 million house, calculate tax, boom, how convenient. And I will notice that the city, I'm sure, paid a fortune more for this than it was worth, but when they calculate the tax on a $5 million property, the tax should have gone down. I guess actually that's the new effect as of June 30th. So still they're grabbing down to 5 million, and that number doesn't raise until June 24th. But a couple of things to notice. One is it's not just on mansions, it's on any real estate. So that would include multifamily properties, like a building with, say, 100 units in it for low-income people. That is now being taxed if it sells for more than $5 million at that 4% rate. So it's important to know the distinction is on real property. It's not in mansions. It's not houses of people with certain income levels or higher or anything like that. Also, look at those numbers. I find it fascinating. The city goes, well, you know what? Houses more than 5 million, we'll just take, 4%. And it's interesting, all the arguments over real estate commissions for the last months have been that it used to be a 6% rate was most common. Here in LA, it's probably 5%. In many cases on large properties, it's 4%. This is more than all the realtors would make on a transaction. The listings agent, the buyer's agent, often there's two on each side in these higher transactions. But in this mansion tax, they're taking 4% up to 10 million and 5.5% up to that. That's more than realtors usually make on those properties. So apparently realtors' commissions are pretty small if the city can just take this money from people without them agreeing to it before they bought the property. So like everything else, let's take a look and see what the results were. How did it go? I mean, when we campaigned on this thing, we had all kinds of promises. Well, according to KTLA News, 1 year in, LA mansion tax raises a fraction of expectations. And the numbers are pretty pathetic. Where originally when they campaigned for this, they were promising between 600 million and 1.1 billion dollars of revenue. Of course, the city officials were just salivating being able to buy more limousine rides and more trips to Europe and entertaining the communist leader here in LA and the Olympics and all kinds of money they could spend for their treats. Turns out it only raised $265 million. I'm sorry, $215 million. Well, that's not 1.1 billion. That's not even 600 million. That's a lot less. And so like everything the government does, they just pull up a number and say, well, we'll just tax people and that money comes to us. And the reality is when you tax something, people find a way to create less of it. I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. But let's go back to the campaign. Back when we campaigned it, what will the 900 million mean for Measure ULA will be used for? And this is the campaign, Our Future Los Angeles. Oh, it sounds great. 70% they said would go to affordable housing, which means they were saying about $630 million. Well, turns out not close. And what's interesting about that fact is we probably are now building less housing because of this. And I'll show you that in just a minute. So not only are we not getting money for affordable housing, we're taking money out of the housing market. And then 30% was going to go to homeless prevention. That was going to be 270 million. Just notice that smaller number is off so much that even we didn't even collect, if we put all of it to homelessness, it doesn't cover that number. So the results are so bad that we can't even cover the second promise of the campaign, let alone the first promise of the campaign. So what is it doing? Well, one of the things it has done is it's actually destroying the rental market. Now, this was reported by, of all people, the Los Angeles Times, and I'm not, I had this behind the paywall here. Let me just see real quick if I can jump into that. Let's see, 12 foot, because we don't want to pay the LA Times for their propaganda nonsense. Here we go. Okay. So the Mansion Act is hurting everyday renters, and what they point out is that now who wants to build a $5 million house? Well, you are building. You might want to build a $5 million multifamily unit for renters, but it's going to cost you 4% more now than before. Come time when you sell it. And if you want to build one that's worth 10 million or more, it's going to cost you 5.5% more. So when people look at an investment over, say, a 5-year period, they might want to net, let's just say, 10% per year for 5 years is a 50% return on investment gross, maybe 10% per year. You take 5.5 off the top of that, you've now tightened the margins. And I can just tell you, every single deal, the margins are always tight, particularly now with interest rates high and inflation raising the cost of building materials and labor. By the way, we raised the minimum wage. So it costs more to build multifamily, and now the city is taking out another chunk of that money. As a result, less are being built. And this is noted even by the LA Times, which is the propaganda arm of the city of Los Angeles. So what does that mean? Well, I ran the numbers myself, and when I ran public record information for the 1 year from the tax went into effect, April 1st, 2023. Now, there were a lot of sales before that anticipating this new tax. But during that period, before the period before taxes went, the tax went into effect, we had, April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023, we had over 970 sales over 5 million. We had over 970. The following year, April 1st, 2023 till March 31st, 2024, according to public records I checked at First American, only 275 sales. So total sales over $5 million are down by about 2/3. That means there's less mansions being sold. It also means less multifamily, less commercial buildings, less industrial buildings, everything in the city of Los Angeles is down by about 2/3. And this is what the LA Times said was going to happen. And of course, that's exactly what happens. Let's take a look. Let's imagine that the only thing you focus on is mansions. Let's say you hate rich people and you want to literally dig money in their pocket and get the money out. I read this article, and this was interesting. This is on this is a Washington Examiner. And it quoted LA saying that while nationwide mansions, housing sales over 5 million went down by 19%, in LA, it went down by a staggering 24%. And that didn't sound right to me. So I actually ran the numbers myself. I went in the MLS and I pulled single family homes from April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. We closed 379 in the city of Los Angeles for just over $4 billion. And the following year, April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024, we closed only 129, about less than a third, for about $1.3 billion, which means that we reduced, realtor commissions in LA by $136 million. And it sounds great. Let's stick it to the rich. But think about the people who didn't buy $5 million houses, not those that sold, but those who didn't buy them. They didn't buy new furniture to put into them. They didn't hire the moving companies to move them. They didn't buy the paint to repaint them when they moved in or before they moved in. They didn't hired landscapers to redo the landscaping to their liking. They didn't pay state taxes. They didn't pay federal taxes on those sales because those sales are getting deferred. The escrow companies didn't get fees. Title company didn't get fees. So while higher interest rates are a reason why sales are down, clearly in LA, we have an implosion of sales. And again, I don't really want to trust the news. I went to the MLS. Our luxury sales, or those sales over 5 million, just single family homes, are down by over 2/3. It's crushing that market, and more importantly, crushing all the mom and pops. Think about the landscaping guy who didn't get the contract. He didn't go out to eat at the restaurant to celebrate the new deal. The movers who moved didn't go out to McDonald's after getting paid because of that. It affects all of us throughout the whole city. And this really isn't being talked about because the propaganda of the news is so bad. Here's, for example, Fortune magazine. It says the mansion tax was a nightmare for Los Angeles real estate this year. That's true. Selling Sunset Star says, but 2024 could be a sweet spot for buyers. It could be a sweet spot. What does it mean? That the prices have dropped so much that now buyers will be able to take advantage of the sellers? Don't forget, the sellers live here. The buyers are moving from out of state. We're crushing our residents, but it's good for buyers who can buy on the cheap. Is it good to cut housing prices? Is that our strategy to do that? And also, what happens is people who aren't able to sell, are they living here? Well, in many cases, they move out of state and buy a house and either refinance the residence here and rent it or keep it as a second or third home. But we have more rentals. Well, is that good? We have squatters. We have people who don't, buy houses here. Is that a good thing for economy? I can't imagine that it is. Yet Fortune magazine says, rather than its destruction of value or taking of money from the owners of the property, let's not focus on that. It's a sweet spot for potential buyers. That's a nice way to put this. So at the end of the day, has the mansion tax helped us? Well, we know it took in $215 million of tax revenue. We know it destroyed about $136 million of commissions, and probably 2 or 3 times that in other business got lost. We know that state and federal taxes got lost because houses and other properties didn't sell. And I only calculated commissions on residential. Who knows what they were in the commercial properties? So at the end of the day, I think when you calculate all this, while the city of LA might have got nominally more money on the bottom line, on the top line, on the bottom line, we've all lost. This is a ripoff of the worst part. This was basically the city of LA reaching in the pocket of homeowners and grabbing from them their hard-earned equity. Not because the city needs the money, because they're misspending it left and right. And by the way, in prior episodes, I talked about how these programs for affordable housing and homelessness are being squandered. So city tax and many of our city officials are corrupt, taking money from taxpayers and giving it to other corrupt businesses rather than allowing the free market to build more housing and solve the problem. What do you think? Has it been a good thing? Has it helped you? Do you feel good that we're taking money from the rich millionaires and billionaires, or do you see that this has been affecting our economy and is one more reason why the LA business scene is struggling to really move forward? So put your comments in, like or don't like it, save it, subscribe, reach out to me. I'm at LAProbate, and as always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.